welcome, and thank you for joining us today. This is a short introduction for the video that we did at Tulkon last week on Cowboys. What did Hollywood get right and what did they get wrong? It consisted of Ian McMurtry, myself, Gordon, and Nancy Fry from Washington State via Zoom. Due to some technical issues, Ian and I are never seen on camera, but I think it's a good little panel, and I hope you'll enjoy it. Thank you.
And people have shot at the monument over the years, and there's bullet pock marks and everything. People chipped off souvenirs of it. And my date.
Say what Hollywood gets wrong, what Hollywood gets right, et cetera.
Okay. You know that the monument wasn't here.
Yeah.
When this, and she said it wasn't. I can just think of Clyde Barrow pulling over. So, well, this is where Henry told us to be.
Yeah.
Fight us today.
Nancy, has Gordon made it?
Yeah.
Right here. Can you hear me?
All right, I guess we'll get this started.
I'm here.
We have a few technical difficulties on this end, so we'll wave it behind the camera. But what we're going to talk about today, Gordon and Nancy, is what Hollywood got right, what Hollywood got wrong with Cowboys.
That's easy.
And can we take this into space?
Oh, Space Cowboys.
Why not?
Well, and my co-panelist up here is Ian McMurtry, better known as Law Dog,
who got drunk suckered into doing a Space Cowboys anthology. So the timing of this is a little suspicious.
I know nothing. Nancy, if you would introduce yourselves.
Hi. I'm Nancy Fry. Got some experience in the film and television industry and in historical reenacting, costuming, wardrobe, whatever, folkways. And this is my husband, Gordon, who's the real brains of the operation.
And I've actually chased cattle.
Sometimes against his will.
Yes. And we did a lot of Hollywood stuff too. Not a lot of cowboy Hollywood stuff, but a lot of horsey Hollywood stuff.
Same thing.
Yeah,
Pretty much.
same, different time.
No,
different
It's
place.
just different Yankees burning down southern towns at different times. Yeah.
Yep. So I guess I'll start off with a question of what did Hollywood get right, Gordon and Nancy?
One of the big things that they got right, if you want to just get into specific movies, is what was that one? Open Range. Had a whole lot of really good stuff in it. But they they got some of the guns right, and they got some of the saddles right, and they got some of the clothes right. But like Lincoln said, you can fool some of the people all the time and all the people some of the time, but not all the people all the time. So they didn't get everything right.
For those who haven't seen Open Range, explain what that movie is and who's in it.
It's a
what
Kevin
it's about.
Costner movie. Kevin Costner and Robert Duvall, and it's just very, very well done. About well, I'm not going to get into the plot, but they just did a really good job with the physical culture. Another one that's really good with the physical culture was was Appaloosa. Very, very good. If you're watching a John Wayne movie, toss any concept of reality out the window.
Good stories.
Yeah.
But the wardrobe and the material culture and everything is not good.
Pure 1950s fantasy.
Okay, well, let's go back a little further. Let's go back to Tom Mix.
Oh,
And-
that's great. In fact, Wyatt Earp was the technical advisor on several of those movies. So it's hard to get that too wrong when Wyatt Earp was actually involved. Now,
Well, let's face it, Wyatt Earp would tell you whatever you paid him to tell you.
this is also true. He bought Colt revolvers by the case lot and sold them as his last gun that he used at the OK Corral, even though it was made in 1900.
And who did he get that idea from?
Probably Bat Masterson.
Yes, that man.
Well,
He was the one that actually started doing that in New York.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Bill Hickok did the same thing.
Yep.
Well, heck yeah, if you can make money, what the
Yep.
heck?
Was Tom Mix the first 10-gallon hat, or did that go back a ways?
No,
I think he was the first 10 gallons.
yeah, he was the first 10-gallon hat.
Now, William S. Hart, he was really, really good.
Oh, that's the guy I'm thinking
Um,
of. Yeah.
William S. Hart, especially there's one about the Oklahoma land rush that was just great. The material culture is just phenomenal. Now it's circa 1910 or 1900 as opposed to 1890, but it's really, really good. The later you get, the more fantasy like. Well, I mean, one of my favorite things to complain about with Hollywood is the Buscadero saddle or Buscadero holster rig. And like you see these drop holsters that these guys are wearing, which unless you have your little tiny loop of leather over the hammer to keep it from going anywhere, the minute your horse starts getting restless and fidgety and being a pain in the butt, your pistol's flying off. Now, this is what they used. Certainly in the later years. This is a Mexican loop holster, just loops over the belt. And this is basically what most of these guys used from about 1880 on. This is the standard Hollywood pistol from forever. It's a Colt single action Army. In fact, this may have been a Hollywood gun. It's been bobbed down to 5.5 inches from the original 7.5. They did that in the 1890s. And it's even got that US mark on the side of it, because Hollywood bought all these guns surplus from the Army in the 19 teens and 20s. And so that's what they used forever, was these things that are now worth, about 10 grand.
What kind is that?
They weren't at the time. They were just old beat up,
Army
cavalry
shirt?
guns and cowboy guns. Now, what's cool, we're talking about gunfighters too. Almost all the big gunfighters carried Colt single action Army revolvers marked US because they were stolen from the Army. You couldn't get them on the civilian market very easily, but you could get them on the black market because soldiers would desert, take their pistol with them and sell it at the first farmhouse they came to. And the West was awash with stolen pistols.
Yep. Gordon, do you remember, or Nancy, do you remember what the name of the company was that bought all those guns back in the early 19
Was it Western Costume
Or was it Stembridge?
or No, Stembridge didn't.
Oh, that's
exist yet.
later.
I think it was Western Costume.
Came before Stembridge.
Yeah. Was it-
Stembridge
was-
later bought them.
Who was it?
Yes.
Well, Western Costume's the only one. I've seen a lot of like
Western.
trapdoor carbines marked WC. So Western Costume Company.
Their provenance was, the other thing that they developed was the 5-in-1 blank.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because
5-in-1 was something else.
It was a blank that would operate in 5 different guns. That was why the 5-in-1.
Yeah.
because my Winchester here is in 44 Winchester centerfire, otherwise known as 4440. My revolver is in 45 Colt. They don't take the same cartridge, but they took the same blank. 5-in-1.
And that blank would also fit in a 38,
3840.
3840.
Yeah, 3840. There's 5 because it's 45 long Colt, 4440 rifle, 4440 pistol, 3840 rifle, and 3840 pistol.
Yep.
That way, the Hollywood company could buy one box of shells
Yeah.
and fit all
Unless I think Baldwin bought them, which they were all low.
Yeah.
of the, no comment.
Makes
Yep.
life a lot easier unless you're Alec Baldwin.
Yeah. You were talking about the Buscadero rig, which wasn't invented until 1920.
Right.
Here, let me see if I can share screen.
I'm gonna try to share a picture of a Buscadero rig.
Oh,
And
nope, can't. Just
Oh.
share screen is disabled. Darn it.
Sorry.
Where's your copy of Packing Iron? I can't find it.
it's in here somewhere. I'll be back. I'll let her talk.
Yeah, I can't share screen. I've got a picture of a Buscadero rig up. It's basically, you've seen him in all the TV Westerns. The guy's usually wearing his gun belt really low slung, which is not practical. And then the holster is hanging way down low off the bottom of the rig, and it was not found in nature. It was it was a very impractical thing to do. I'm leafing through another book I found that, by the way, this is a fabulous book, Glare. So I See by Your Outfit by Tom Lindmeyer and Steve Mount. And it's just full of wonderful, real cowboy stuff. If you can find a copy of this, you can probably get it off of Amazon. It's really nice. Did you find it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Gordon found Packing Iron. This is another book. If you're writing Old West stuff and you're not personally familiar with a lot of things, it's basically about guns and historical guns and gun leather. Gordon's going to find a nice Buscadero to show you.
Oh, these are so ugly.
I know, but that's okay. It's got a good diagram. This is a fancy Buscadero rig here, but you can see how there's a slot in the gun belt, and then the holster hangs down low. This is a pretty beautiful carving, but a tame Buscadero. A lot of them hung a lot lower. And it's a 1950s TV Western.
Ooh, here we go.
Oh, he found a real ugly one.
So all of these are Buscadero rigs.
Yeah, like
they just hang real low, and that just wasn't a thing. It really wasn't a thing.
and you can see who's wearing it. TV Western guys, because real cowboys didn't wear that.
A lot of the cowboys, the pants pockets back then were more vertical,
Yes.
and they would line the strong side pocket with leather and actually stuff their pistol down their pockets a lot of times.
Yeah.
Dallas Studenmeyer, who was the marshal in El Paso, had his back pockets lined.
Yep.
He carried his revolvers in his back pockets.
Yep. And another thing that they did was a lot of them would take and cut down the Civil War holster, flap holsters,
I think there's something of that.
and put them offside, basically as a cross draw,
Or a cavalry draw.
or a cavalry draw, because that made the pistol readily available whether they were on horseback or on the ground. Now
This
that
is a Slim Jim, which is basically what the cavalry holster was with a flap over it.
right.
But this is the early style, and this is for a cap and ball revolver, a Navy, which was extremely popular in the West because it was nice and light. Lighter than a Colt Dragoon, was a big heavy brute. 36 caliber, but it was considered sufficient for the most part. Anyway, different holsters for different periods.
Right. Now, the next question is, do you remember why in the 1870s they chose the single action army over the Schofield number 3?
One was you didn't shoot as much ammunition.
Okay, that's one reason. You want to
Another
take
reason.
another reason?
The simultaneous ejection, when you got really enthusiastic, would sometimes not, and would lock up the gun.
Okay, that,
Ian said.
Yep, and that's how you have to unload and load these one at a
Can
time.
you hold that closer to the camera so people, what Gordon was doing was he was pushing the ejecting rod, and you see how it comes out the cylinder, so it's going to push out the spent shells.
The thing is that Wyatt Earp discovered is that you could disable a Smith & Wesson by whacking somebody over the head with it.
yep.
And a single action, it's nice and solid frame, and so it didn't come apart when you whack people over the head with it.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I have one that shoots a little bit to the right because my uncle carried it as a sheriff in Louisiana back in the early 1900s.
And I'm sure he never whacked anybody with it.
Yeah, well, yeah, it just shoots a little bit to the right.
Well, actually,
But-
I've got an Army Colt 1917 model, big double action, and somebody tweaked the sight over, took a pair of pliers and cranked it over. It shoots dead on now, but the original sighting was not the best.
He's over there shaking his head like he doesn't have a Ruger with stripper glitter. in his mechanism.
Not anymore. I paid somebody to clean the stripper dust out of the mechanism.
The real reason that they chose the Colt single action over the Schofield number 3, which is actually a better cavalry pistol,
Mhm.
was it loaded one-handed, was the simple fact that the Schofield shot a shorter 45 round than the Colt did.
Mhm.
And the Army, in their infinite wisdom, did not match up ammunition with where the pistols were. The Colt could shoot both the short and long 45 rounds, whereas the Schofield could not.
Actually, they had to redesign the Schofield round to fit in the Colt too, because the rim was wider.
Yep.
So that it would eject better. And so you ended up in the early 1870s with two completely inappropriate or non-interchangeable rounds.
Yep.
Both 45s, but they didn't work in the other gun.
And the Army hasn't changed since.
None of them. They're all the same. These big bureaucracies, they do things the same way.
Yep. The next thing I want to talk about is saddles. Because you have the McClellan, you have the English, you have the Western, and you have the side saddle. And Gordon, I'm sure you probably got all four of them.
Well, he didn't bring up the McClellan because he didn't think that would come up, but he brought the,
Out of the way, woman.
okay.
This is it's a sort of a half-breed saddle. This was it's a copy of model 1833 Dragoon saddle, which is just a Mexican saddle tree with more English style stuff on it. And then I put the McClellan skirts. Yeah, oh my God, I can't lift it up. There we go. So I've got the Army style taps on it. But this is how they started off, just a raw tree. In fact, it's kind of cool. I was just thinking about this on the way over, that the modern American saddle, cowboy saddle, is this weird combination of a North African saddle and a Hungarian saddle by way of Mexico that the Spaniards brought with them in the 16th century. And then the Mexicans got smart, and because the weather, different weathers, dry or humid, when you wrap it in rawhide.
And this is all rawhide. It's not bare wood, in case anyone doesn't realize.
When you wrap it in wet rawhide, then as the wood expands, the rawhide, of course, is going to get a little damper with the humidity, and it expands. When it dries out, it shrinks down. So it's really, really strong.
It holds everything together.
And all modern, well, unless they're plastic, all modern American saddles, Western saddles, are built exactly the same way as a Mexican saddle, because that's what they are. They're just a modified Mexican saddle.
With a smaller horn.
Well, yeah.
But it's still a good size.
The Mexican saddles get bigger horns. They're very cool. I used to ride one of those a lot. It was very neat. And I was going to say, oh yeah, so the Cias de Jinete, which was the North African style saddle, and then the Hungarian saddle, which is Spanish name escapes me for some reason. But they're not descended from the Cias de Armas, the knightly saddle. They sort of went that way. They sort of became that way independently, but they're not, even though it looks kind of like the kind of saddle a knight would ride. But actually the Portuguese saddle is descended from the knightly saddle. Yep. So if you get a Portuguese bullfighter saddle, there you go.
And there's you can see the high cantle keeps you in the saddle.
I got one of those.
Oh, he's going to get one.
Yeah, one of the things they had to do, talking about the difference between the war saddle and the Hungarian and Portuguese saddle, was they had to downsize them because they were made for basically Percheron size horses.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
And this is something that even people who are really into horses today, they don't realize that the cowboy horse in the 19th century was a narrower chested, higher withers, narrower withers. You get an antique saddle and try and put it on a modern barrel chested quarter horse, and it's just going to be sitting on top of it like this.
That's why most McClellans don't fit modern horses. And like this guy's real narrow.
It's sort of an 1890s era.
Yeah, this is cool. It was made by Lawrence Saddlery in Portland, Oregon, right around 1910.
It's got the nice open
yeah, it's
stirrups.
but it's got this super high back and you don't get on it, you get in it.
Yeah.
It definitely holds you in place very, very firmly.
And you can see it's got the smaller horn. It's becoming more gringo.
It's very gringo. But this is, it's not descended so much from the, like the Veracruz or Tamaulipas type saddle, but more from the California saddle, which was a little lighter.
You see, it doesn't have the elaborate skirting on it like the other one did.
Right.
It's just open.
The Texas saddles were bigger and heavier. Well, this is plenty heavy, but they were bigger and heavy because they descended from the more eastern Mexican saddles, and then
And
more western are lighter because they're descended from the California saddle. In fact, the name of the Western Cowboys, Buckaroo, is descended from vaquero, buckaroo. So
why were the Texas saddles heavier? What was another reason?
one of them was they didn't know how to held a rope.
Hey, I resemble that remark.
They would tie hard and fast. They would tie their lariat to the horn and then rope the cow. Whereas yeah, and then the Californians would dally or dar la vuelta. They wrap it around. And if you've ever watched a Mexican rodeo, which is really cool, by the way, I love Mexican rodeos. They do one thing where they rope a horse and they dally, they wrap their lariat around the horn, and then they smoke it. Man,
They
just
let it
play
run out, and this
It's
crazy.
cooler than heck.
Yeah.
But Californians use like a 60-foot riata. As one friend of mine said when he was harassed by some Texans for it, because he was from Nevada. They said, "Why you got such a long rope?" He said, "Well, I got a slow horse." So, but you know, you don't need as much strength on the saddle if you dally instead of tie hard and fast. And the Texans had to have the double rig, which means you had to have two of your girth straps or cinches because it'd pop you up. The saddle would rise up and kick you out of the saddle. The Californians figured, well, hell, if you just lean back in it, you don't need to worry about that. So there's a great book called California Cowboys, and it's all about ragging on Texans. It's hilarious. It's from the late 19th.
Size of the cattle too.
It
was a bigger cow.
Well, maybe, probably. I prefer to think it was better horsemanship on the Californians' part.
Yeah.
Californian.
Yeah.
But part of it too is the Californios were really into they used cattle to train their horses. The Texans used horses to deal with the cattle. The Californios used the cattle to train their horses. They were more into horses than they were into cattle. Cattle were just sort of a necessary.
It's the day job.
Yeah, that was the day job. That was a necessary thing, but it was the horse that was important, and that's why those guys put so much money into their saddlery.
Yep.
And that's where all that Pasadena Rose Parade tack comes from.
Oh yeah.
Which is just obnoxiously garish.
Yeah.
And it was a freaking ton.
Yeah, you got to have 3 men and a boy to lift that saddle onto the horse.
Yeah.
I wonder
right.
how many people it takes to get that saddle up on the.
More than one.
Yeah. Oh yeah, with all the silver and stuff on there too, you know, not just the leather and the wood.
The next thing I want to talk about is costuming.
Yeah.
Nancy, this is more down your,
Yeah. Yeah.
so what did they get right? What did they get wrong?
Well, I'm going to refer again to Appaloosa. There's some nice touches in that movie. This is the one with Viggo Mortensen and Ed Harris from a few years back. It's based on a novel of the same name. They're really good novels, by the way. I enjoy them. Just nice little touches, like when Viggo Mortensen takes off his hat, he has a tan line across his forehead. He's pasty white from here on up and nice and tan from here on down. You didn't go outside without a hat on. I hate Hollywood and TV movies, historical ones, where men and women are running around outside without a hat on. And it's just, no, everybody wore a hat all the time. You took your hat off when you went into the restaurant. You took your hat off when, maybe not when you went into church, depending on the church, because if the church was, you know, airy and cold or whatever, but that was, you wore a hat. And you also one thing that a lot of things are popping into my head, novels, TV, movie, everybody gets wrong, is that up until not too long ago, shirts were underwear. This shirt, a button down shirt like this, that's a cotton shirt, linen shirt, that's underwear. Something like this is a costumey one, but this made out of wool is an overshirt. This is an overgarment worn over another shirt. But this is underwear. So you don't go out in public without a waistcoat, a vest, and a coat on, or at least your coat. And guys just walking around in a shirt and suspenders, that's kind of, if you want to make a statement about how rude and crude somebody is, or how outre somebody is, that's fine. But a civilized person didn't dress like that. Also, if you want to go back even farther into the early 19th century, you want to get into mountain man stuff, guys didn't come into town in their buckskins. You didn't, pardon?
Not a real town.
Not a real town. Yeah. Not civilization. You didn't go into civilization wearing your buckskins. That was working out in the field clothes. And again, and also speaking of field clothes, jeans. Here's another rag on John Wayne movies. He was always wearing his 501s turned up at the bottom and everything. Jeans were field hand clothes. Also, the original jeans, cotton, duck, jean cloth, whatever, they were over trousers to wear over your real trousers, which were usually wool. They were a protective garment. They were a coverall.
And cowboys didn't wear them because they had rivets which would scratch up your saddle, especially the rivet that was dead center of your crotch. Which they ended up removing because guys sitting in front of a campfire tended to complain about the heat.
They were walking.
You don't want a rivet right there.
Ow!
Funny for a reason there.
Also about shirts is they were all pullovers.
Yeah.
Until really about 1930. The idea of button all the way down shirts, they called it a shirt coat, and that was kind of unusual even in the 30s. So
yeah, shirts only buttoned down to about, here. And this is something that ticked me off in an otherwise really good movie, which is Unforgiven, the Clint Eastwood film, which was part of the resurgence of the Western, which was wonderful. You got Silverado, and then Unforgiven's a little darker. In the first scenes, Clint Eastwood's character is out chopping wood and doing stuff, and he looks perfect. He's got the perfect trousers, and he's got the placket front shirt, and he looks like he belongs in the Old West. Well, when they gear up to go do their mission and do their thing, he puts on his Clint Eastwood costume. So and Morgan Freeman, same thing, a shirt that buttons all the way open, and just stupid stuff that doesn't belong in a good Western. And it's sad because they get so much other right in that movie. I love how they deal with the whores. They're not all wearing Miss Kitty costumes. They just look like women wearing day dresses, which is what you would do. And you wouldn't be sitting out on your porch soliciting in your underwear or in some fancy dance hall girl costume. You would just be wearing a plain dress. Maybe it's cut a little low for the time of day, but it would just be a regular dress. And they did that in Unforgiven, and I really appreciate that.
Okay, that brings up another point. Dresses. I know both my grandmothers talked about having one Sunday go to meeting dress.
Yes.
And one dress for the rest of the week.
Yep. Fabric was expensive. Back in the day, fabric was expensive and labor was cheap. You're making it yourself. Today, fabric is cheap and labor is expensive. So it was a different thing. And unless you were a New York socialite, you hopefully had a nice go-to-meeting dress for parties and Sunday and getting married in. And it was usually the one you got married in, and that was your best dress. And then the rest of the week, yeah, you had your day dress, and then, oh, you're pregnant now. You got married and you're pregnant. So you need something that can expand and contract with you. So you'd have a wrapper or a Mother Hubbard or something that can accommodate that. But yeah, you didn't have a wardrobe full of clothes and then throw them in the washing machine at the end of the week. So what you did was you had a lot of underwear. You had a lot of chemises, which you wore under your corset. Anybody who's watching Bridgerton, just slap yourself right now, because that is a terrible show. They're showing women wearing corsets with nothing underneath them, which is from outer space. I don't know why they're doing that. And I haven't even watched the show. I've just heard people whine about it. So, but yeah, you had a lot of underwear because that's what's sweating and getting dirty. And you want to protect your nice clothes, which are harder to wash, because before fast dyes and things like that, you didn't want to be washing and scrubbing your clothes all the time, because for one thing, it's hard on them. And anyway, but so you have your underwear, you're changing out your underwear, your chemises, your drawers, if you wear them, and that kind of thing. And maybe your petticoats once in a while, because the petticoat also protects the skirt of your dress from the dirt. And if you're on a cattle ranch or on a farm or somewhere where the streets aren't paved and beautiful all the time, you're not wearing skirts that trail behind you. You're hemming them a little bit shorter. It's an interesting thing to put in your novels or your films, and that up until, again, fairly recently, like the last 80, 90 years, you could kind of tell what somebody's social status was, kind of where they lived and what they did by how they dressed. You look at occupational photographs of washerwomen and oyster gatherers and things like that. And those women's hems are off the ground. You can see their ankles, and it's not that big of a deal, but they're lower class, they're working class. They're not dragging their skirts all around. In a fancy mansion, in a big house in the city, even in the Wild West, the lady of the house can have skirts that trail behind her, but the maids and the cooks and the women who are working there, their hems are going to be a little shorter, because they have to wear that dress. That's their one uniform. They can't have it dragging around and getting filthy. So it's going to be hemmed a little shorter.
One thing I want to throw in back to shirts is one of the reasons it was disgusting to show off all your shirt too, was not many men wore underwear under pants. Okay. And your shirt under drawers. Yeah. Your shirt was part of your underwear, literally was your underwear. They didn't have t-shirts and stuff. And so you used it as one early 20th century writer put it, as a suspensory. And so he's
dancing around this, but the shirts were cut long enough so that you could pull the back up through your legs. And just like women did with their chemises under their drawers, you pull the chemise through as under pants.
And so when you talk about your dirty laundry,
It was literally dirty laundry.
dirty laundry. So if you saw a guy in shirt sleeves, he was definitely, slumming. And if there was a woman coming around of any sort, you put on a vest at the very least.
Yeah.
Because that was otherwise, you might as well be half naked. And
they just women getting pregnant and maybe having an additional wrapper. My great grandmother told us about. Now she grew up out on a farm, and they wore what was called a prairie dress.
Yes.
It was kind of yoked at the top, but then it was just loose.
Yep. It's basically the Western muumuu. And when you hear the term Mother Hubbard, that's what they're talking about.
And that was what they wore. One, because it was easy to make, and two, because it was so versatile. And of course, they always protected it with an apron.
An apron,
and Grandma's, Mom Shaw's family spent more money on apron fabric and, of course, their underwear than they ever did on their dress.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you want to have lots of aprons. You want to have lots of underwear, because otherwise, you're going to wreck your clothes otherwise.
It's like guys had cuffs and collars. That's what showed. That's what you laundered all the time. The shirt you could keep all week, but the cuffs and collars you changed every day.
Yeah, and the sailor collars.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, those things were interesting. We have a little museum up in Clarendon, Texas, called Saints Roost. And one of the more interesting displays in there is the display of saddles, because it not only has who rode the saddle, but who made the saddle.
Nice.
And that is actually a higher priority according to the curator than whose saddle it was.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Who made it.
Oh, something I wanted to also bring up, we're talking about proper clothing. Was there's a great story from Jack Hayes, John Coffey Hayes, when he was a Texas Ranger captain during the Republic. And these Rangers came in from one of their scouts, and the first thing they ran into was there was a Mexican family having a big fandango. They wanted to go to the fandango. Well, they wouldn't let them in because they didn't have coats on. They didn't have their stuff. There was one guy had a coat with him, and so only one of them could go in at a time. And so they'd go in with the coat on, and they'd have a good time and get liquored up, and then go out and swap coats with the next guy who'd go in and have fun and dance and stuff. But you know, this is this is in the 1830s or early 40s, and yeah, these guys, there was certain decorum that you had to do, even out on the frontier. You didn't have a coat, you didn't get to come in and play.
Yep. And that was not that unusual. The other thing that I wanted to talk about, and we'll start with Ian, is the difference in the horses that we're seeing today used on a cattle ranch and what they had back in the 40s,
Lord.
50s.
Oh, Lord. Back in the Old West, you didn't have out in the Western side, you didn't have a whole bunch of purpose-bred horses. You had basically what you could get a hold of. Whereas these days, it's quarter horses. It's all quarter horses. The ranch I worked at had one Arab in the on the ranch, and the rest of them were quarter horses. And the Cowboys wouldn't ride the Arab. Whereas
I wouldn't.
in the Old West, you rode, there was a lot of Mustangs.
Yeah.
And a lot of, byblows. It's like, that stallion got on those mares. Hey, that's a horse for you.
Yeah.
You're going to ride it. Well, they didn't.
Yeah.
The specialized, quarter horses come in two subsets. You got the working cow pony and you got the racing horses. And you can tell the difference in the working cow ponies. They've become so specialized. You didn't have specialization in the Old West. You do now, you didn't back then.
The other thing is the Morgans, the Arabs, the Appaloosas, they were not special horses back in the day. And Nancy, you alluded to it earlier, the narrower, smaller breed horses.
Yeah. I mean, like, look at the skinny little butt on this guy.
Yeah.
That's not our modern quarter horse with a nice big round paddable butt.
Modern quarter horse is a result of a lot of intensive breeding.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, one thing too is that they didn't treat them all that well.
Right.
They didn't get grained. They were just thrown out on a pasture. And so, like on a cattle drive, Cowboy had 7 horses in his string.
Yep.
Because you could only ride it hard for 1 day a week.
Yep.
Other than that, you're just going to ruin it.
On a
So
long cow drive, you expect to lose at least one horse at during the course of the cow drive.
Yeah.
oh yeah, either from mishap or being killed by one of the cattle.
Well, not knowing that, but horses are an accident looking for a place to happen.
Yeah.
If a horse is a great big pile of this shouldn't work on 4 delicate little legs.
Yeah.
And if it can go wrong on a horse, it will go wrong on the horse.
And that's another thing a lot of film, television, and novels get wrong is you got your hero or whomever riding the same horse every day, all the time.
Granddad's favorite horse, Dexter.
Oh,
Yeah, they swapped out the horses because like something delicate.
You
And
can't do that. You
Yeah,
can't.
that's a way to ruin a horse.
yeah,
Unless they're grain fed, like the army could have their soldiers ride the same horse every day because they fed them a lot of grain. They take, you can make a soldier do certain things that a cowboy is not necessarily going to do. And
Yeah.
Graining them is one of them. And in fact, grain was a big portion of the cavalry horses load. In the United States cavalry, the maximum load was with horse, for the saddle, equipment, and rider was 225 pounds.
Yep.
And the British had actually 250 for some reason, but Americans with 225, and that included about 15 or more pounds of oats.
Yep. The other thing that was interesting when you go back and look at it is the breeds that you had did not have all the problems that they have today. You go back, for example, a neighbor, say Indians,
Oh, yeah.
primary breeders of the Appaloosas.
Yeah.
The Appaloosas weren't the sick problem child horses.
Psychotic is the word you're looking for.
Spots was not psychotic.
Crazy.
And neither were Arabs.
Right.
Yeah.
Arabs had to be tough and good and strong and easy to work with. It was life and death.
There's a ranch in Arizona that's name, of course, escapes me. It might be the old hash knife, but anyway, they run Arab horses, exclusively Arabian horses, but they're thrown out in the pasture. And when that horse, the mare, is bred, they don't give her any special attention. She just goes out into the pasture and has that colt. And if it survives, it's a heck of a good horse. If it doesn't, oh well.
Yep.
You'll find-
Still, there is a difference between the Arab breed as bred in the US
Yes,
and in
the Arabs.
Africa.
Not as big a difference as you'd think.
Well, the one major difference is the size of the hoof.
The Arabs haven't been subjected to basically inbreeding quite as bad as a lot of other horses and most dogs. Because Arabs haven't exactly caught on in the Western United States. It's like, it's an Arab, it's smaller than a pony. I'm a cowboy, I don't ride that.
Yeah.
Right.
They laugh. But
Yeah.
this is the attitude. That one Arab on the ranch that I day worked in the Panhandle, I love that horse. That was a tough little horse. Great cow horse. But
50
nobody
milers just get them going.
used to ride it because it was so small. They all wanted to ride the quarter horses. And that little Arab could outwork quarter horses.
Yeah. Oregon.
Yeah.
And a quarter horse. All three of them were outstanding cattle horses.
Right.
But I preferred the Morgans because
Well-
he was my size.
Another reason the Cowboys didn't like that Arab, and nobody told me the first time I got up on the Arab, was a cutting horse, a quarter horse cutting, sits down on its back legs and pops its front legs back and forth, side to side as it maneuvers. All you do is lay back in the saddle and hang on.
And an Arab teleports.
That Arab, I don't know about other Arabs. That Arab would plant his forelegs and bounce his ass around 80 degrees and could turn on a dime. But if you were used to quarter horse and you laid back,
Oh, woohoo!
when he spotted that cow was coming out, and all right, here we go. I laid back like you do, and then he planted his forelegs and bounced his ass 90 degrees and slung me off like a clay pigeon thrower.
Lawn dart.
Next thing I know, right there, the horse looking down, and going, "Hey, boss,
Why are you on the ground?
boss?"
What are you doing down there?
So I got a good cowboy story for you from my experience. I was actually in Oklahoma, way out in the panhandle, or near the panhandle, near Fay, and which is just above Weatherford. And I had my big old northern quarter horse. He was a big boy. He was like 16 and a half hands. And but the only saddle I had with me was this old German World War II saddle. And so of course the other cowboys were amused. My buddies, they just rolled their eyes, but the other guys,
Well, it
wondered
wasn't
what
like
the-
you were going to be roping or
right,
anything.
but they had no idea what the heck this was. So anyway, we go charging after these bulls in this pasture. They wanted to move them from one to another. And so this bull I'm chasing goes running through this creek. I didn't know they had wild grapevines in that neck of the woods, but just about that level, there was a big bunch of them. And I literally got clotheslined ass right in the creek, and the horse goes chasing. He did his job. He chased that bull right to where it was supposed to be.
You didn't
And
need Gordon.
Didn't need me. Yeah, I was just on for the ride for a short time. And anyway, yeah. So there's awkwardness had been involved.
They found you entertaining.
They found me very entertaining. The bulls, the horses, and the Cowboys.
The thing about horses is what a lot of people, when they're riding, don't get. In books, I get the feeling the horse is a very large Jack Russell Terrier. It does whatever you want it to. It's obedient.
I'm driving my horse.
No.
Yeah, it's basically a motorcycle.
Yeah.
with-
Oh, absolutely.
And the number of, I was telling these guys earlier, there was a little creek that back of the stables. And it was maybe an inch deep and 6 inches across. There's a trickle of water. It's a panhandle. And every day for 3 months, I'd get on the horse, we'd ride across the creek, we'd go do our job. And then 3 months and one day, he decided he saw a dorsal fin in that.
Yeah. It's the Grand Canyon all of a sudden.
And we're done, and we not going anywhere. And you know, the horse has a mind of its own, and people don't ever, the books I've read, they don't ever write that in there. You know, now you never have a problem with the horse. Horse doesn't decide to do something else. Horse doesn't decide he's done. It's like, you know, I hop upon Trigger and we do our job.
Yeah.
Because Trigger is going to change his mind halfway through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, then there's the eye thing. They're separated. If you walk them past a scary thing like an umbrella or a plastic bag every
Right.
day, but they only see it with the right eye, you turn around and walk them the other way, and now they're going to see it with it's a whole new thing, and now they're terrified of because they've never seen it with that eye.
Yeah, the
Now
blood
it's-
suck trash
yeah.
bag
Yeah.
is the horse eating trash bag, Walmart trash bag or grocery bags, a terrible thing. Terrible thing.
Boogers.
Yeah. A lady with a big hat with feathers in it. Whoa, 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 whoa. Depending on the horse. Some might not care.
Horse mothers tell stories of the time that Walmart bag wiped out a herd of horses, and they've never won.
It's legendary.
Falling styrofoam cup.
Yeah.
Well, we had a pair of horses for quite a while. That one was the jousting horse, one was the shooting horse. And the big old, well, I called him a 3/4 horse because he was half quarter horse, quarter Belgian, quarter Percheron. So he was a big boy. He loved the lance. He loved knocking stuff over. He thought knocking somebody off their horse.
I think he was a
cool.
rhinoceros in a previous life.
Yeah, he just thought that was the coolest thing. He'd put his head
Charge
down
at
and boom.
something, knock it down. Yeah.
But if I pulled out a pistol, he'd get all wiggly and didn't know. He'd like, no,
Nope.
we're not doing this. Her little horse, this little appendix quarter horse, he just thought shooting was the coolest thing in the world. But if you pulled out a lance and then, no, that's scary. We're not doing that.
Yeah.
So they have tastes.
Oh, yes. And if you shoot off a horse that's never been shot off of,
Once,
You got to
You're-
work up to it.
a horse,
You'll do that once.
yeah.
No, you got to work up to it. And Woody, the jousting horse, there was just something about it, the poof of smoke or the click or whatever. He just did not like it. If you want to train a horse to shoot, actually right now on YouTube, there's a guy named Braxton McCoy, just like it sounds. He's in Idaho. And he has a nice video on YouTube of training a horse, a freshly started colt to gunfire. And he goes through, it's a laborious process. And here's one day in the life of him getting a horse used to gunfire. And it's definitely sitting on board so that you're there and everybody's happy together. And you're just starting with the click with the revolver, and he works his way up from there. And if you do it right, and the horse has a brain that's wired in right, you shouldn't have a problem.
and I've got a book that was published in 1638 that says exactly the same thing.
Well, I was on a horse, the Texas Department of Corrections. We were looking for a missing child in the Eastern Panhandle breaks, and we borrowed horses from the Texas Department of Corrections, and they swore these horses were trained to gunfire. Because, and I believed them because it's the prison system, you'd think, right?
I'm guessing there was a lot more swearing down the road.
We're going through the breaks, and I come across a little draw, and there's a rabid coyote. And I did not want this coyote to bite this horse. I didn't want to have to explain that. And, I wasn't thinking, if I had been thinking, I thought, well, it's trained to gunfire, no issue here. So I drew and I nailed the coyote. And then Earth Sky Dirt.
Whoops.
So.
Yeah.
Okay, now,
See live.
yeah,
Yeah, lion sacks of monkey nuts.
yeah, now let's take it into science fiction and into space.
I hate you right now.
Yeah.
Haha.
So do you have to have horses to be a cowboy in space, or is cowboy more of an attitude and a mindset?
All right,
Depends on
that's,
The job.
that's the question for you
Well,
and Nancy,
They
Gordon.
don't in Lone Star Planet.
Well, I think actually it depends on how you write it.
Yeah. Gordon, what do you think?
Well, you can if you're doing it, it's about the job, you know, and the realities of the job that make you, you know, what you are. It's like cops have a certain mindset. Truckers have a certain mindset. They're slightly different, but they both deal with a lot of reality. And cowboys get to deal with a lot of reality, like getting kicked, getting bit,
Yeah.
getting
So,
tossed.
so what is a cowboy? He's a guy who's moving a herd of some commodity animal from one place to another, or managing them in a ranch, in an establishment, you know, raising them. So that doesn't have to be cattle. That could be some weird gas bag creature
Yeah.
on Jupiter or
Or
whatever.
was it in Larry Niven's world? He had those guys that would go from the center of the galaxy back to the outside. You know, you can have something that actually lives in space that you're herding around.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's agricultural using livestock.
Yeah, basically moving livestock around and dealing with livestock.
I honestly think that the cowboy part is pretty much inevitable in space because people are going to need protein. As you move out onto planets, move out to, you're going to need to feed your populations moving out. And animals are basically a self-perpetuating, self-feeding source of protein.
Reproducible.
Yeah,
Your logic is a shepherd a cowboy?
Yes.
can be. Can be.
Yeah, and then instead of moving animals to a railhead, you're moving them to a spaceport and then transporting them interplanetary or whatever, you know.
Lot that's at the bottom of a space elevator.
Mm,
What if you have an orbital?
Yeah.
With a grazing area? Yeah.
mhm.
You
I-
still have the sheep battle, cattle wars going on.
Yeah, add different types of animals in there.
The angel said unto the good shepherds, "Get them sheep out of here. This is cattle country."
Yeah,
Well, the whole sheep thing, the sheep cattle thing is largely irrelevant to me. Does anybody know what a zebu is?
yep.
Zebu is African cow. And most of them aren't much bigger than large sheep.
Oh,
They're,
Really?
they're a runty little tough in more ways than one cow. And the Africans that tend to these, they're cowboys. It's basically a cow-shaped sheep.
Yeah.
They're nasty little bastards. They're tough.
Yeah, they're also mean as 14 kinds of hell.
Well, when you live in the same continent, the same zip code as lions, you tend to have to get that way.
Yeah.
so I'm guessing they're not riding on horses managing these guys.
No, they do it on foot.
On foot, they use dogs.
Well, in fact, that's an interesting thing that I mentioned this book, California Cowboys, where this guy's ragging on Texans.
Yeah.
He claims that here's the true cowboy comes from California because it's all horse stuff, whereas the Texan stuff actually has a lot of the African foot herding
Right.
stuff involved.
He has obviously not been in Texas and watched a working ranch in Texas.
Nor has he been in Argentina.
Yeah,
Oh, he
yeah.
didn't say anything. Well,
Yeah, we didn't even get to Argentina.
Argentina is basically like California, the old Californios.
I've worked a lot of cattle with just me and a brace of dogs and
Yeah.
half on the horse, half the time on a four-wheel drive mule. And just having the dogs do most of the work.
Oh yeah, that's a smart way to do it.
Yeah, we had a friend from, was it Rod Green? Where
Rod
was
Green.
was he from?
He was from Wyoming.
He's from Wyoming, but he had a dog he just found on the side of the road one day, but turned out to be a great dog. And he could say, "Hey, trooper, go cut out one horse, whatever the horse's name was. And, okay, the dog would run out there and cut out that horse and bring it to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, we have finished our basically allotted time here. So Gordon and Nancy, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
Thanks for
thank
setting
you.
it up.
This is being recorded, so I'm told. So once we get copies, I will make sure that y'all get copies too.
Great,
right,
thank
super.
you.
And
And will it be okay to, when they give it to you, I'm assuming it would be okay to put it on the Troublemakers YouTube channel?
of
As far as I
course,
know, as far as I know.
Good.
If not, we'll let you know.
Okay.
well, it's gonna go up anyway, whether. All right, well, thank you very much. We truly appreciate it. Hope y'all have a great day. And one of these days, we got to get back together.
Yeah, it'll
Absolutely.
happen.
Hey, guys.
All right.
Adios.
Ciao.